Thank you, Sam. We're now going to have our last Q&A where we're going to have Sam, we're going to have Derek, we're going to have Kasi come over here. You ask them all of your daring questions that you asked over Twitter using the hashtag IFBG24. We'll look through the feed and read them to the speakers. And as we get set up here, I'd like to remind you that each speaker will be available in the afternoon for a one-on-one conversation at DSU. They'll be set up at various activities on the third floor. Check your program for where and when. Some of them are on smaller time frames. And they want to talk to you. You might never see these people again. Don't be afraid. Ask the questions that you want. And also, I ask that you stay seated after the Q&A. We are going to dismiss you by lunch times, with the earliest lunch groups going first. You may now begin.
Okay, hello everybody. Please submit your questions to the hashtag so we can ask them for you. But, what should we start with?
Let's start with this question for Kasi. So, someone wants to know, what high school did you go to? And on a personal question, would you recommend it?
So I will proudly answer this question. I went to the Gatton Academy of Mathematics and Science right here on campus. And what was the second part of that?
Would you recommend it to interested students?
I definitely would. I loved my time at Gatton. I think what's really special about it is that you really have the freedom to kind of explore your deepest interest. I think when I was in my original high school at Russellville, people thought it was very weird to study, and they used to make fun of me for getting good grades. And that shouldn't be the case. It shouldn't be weird to care about school. And when I found at Gatton that everyone loved what they were doing and loved learning, and everyone was kind of weird in their own way, and it made me feel like I could be free to be my weirdest self. And it also really did help me go to prepare for college.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Sam, someone said they're a wrestling fan. Why do you like professional wrestling?
So, oh boy, how much time do we have? I in high school and college performed in pro wrestling shows here in Western Kentucky, which is a whole other conversation for another time. But I love the fact that I could pull in to the National Guard Armory or building number 2 at the fairgrounds, park next to people, but then go on stage and have my neighbors yell at me and hurl terrible insults because, of course, for any of you all know wrestling, I was definitely a heel, a villain. So, wrestling, if alien cultures were to say what exemplifies American culture, I think pro wrestling would have to be the thing that they would report back on. To say, okay, everybody gathers together at this thing that everybody knows isn't real, and they pretend like it is while they're together for the night, complete with spandex and oiled down bodies and music over the loudspeakers. I mean, what could be more American than that, right? So if you want to understand American culture, definitely tune into pro wrestling on any night of the week it's on somewhere.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Dr. Stitt, our own Christina Villa wants to know if the medicine you mentioned for Alzheimer's could be used as preventative measures instead of just a cure.
Boy, that's a question that I've answered a lot of times because I actually saw someone last week who came in and had a lot of questions about trying to prevent Alzheimer's and trying to prevent dementia. Right now, we unfortunately, we haven't done the studies to see if it could act as a preventative. We do know that those proteins that I talked about that we sample in the spinal fluid that show us evidence of the Alzheimer's disease in the brain, we know that they start to accumulate years before anyone has any symptoms. So the question would be is if we could somehow eliminate those proteins earlier, could we get a better benefit? Answer is that study hasn't been done. I suspect at some point someone will do it, and it may be within the next few years. So, but that really is I think that's kind of that's the key for trying to figure out a way to hopefully cure or significantly treat dementia in a much better way is those pathological changes at the cellular level are happening years before anyone shows symptoms. And so by the time they're symptomatic, the the bulk of the damage is already done. So.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Sam, I have a pressing question for you. Who's your favorite wrestler?
Well, my favorite wrestler, that's a tough question. When I was growing up, it was a wrestler named Roddy Piper, who was, among other things, the star of a movie each of you all should see called They Live. Has anybody ever heard of the movie They Live? It was, all right. So the premise of They Live is that aliens have invaded the earth. And all of the bourgeois, all of the rich people are aliens, but the working people are still human. But you can only see the aliens if you put on these special sunglasses. And it's become quite a meme on social media now, where you look at something, then you put on these sunglasses and you see what's really there. And they control us all through advertising. So you would look at billboards and you can see the billboard, but you put on the sunglasses and it says things like obey. And, I think we could take that same idea now to those devices you're all carrying around in your pockets that you're glued to and lead you to walk into walls and all the other stuff you do in your schools, because that's how they're controlling us. So Roddy Piper would be my answer. But if we're going with today, I don't know. That's a good question. I'm quite a fan of maybe Gunther.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Kasi, did you like being the mole? And what were like the best and worst parts of that role in the TV show?
Yes, I did like being the mole. A very unexpected role to have, but I really did enjoy it. I think the best parts of being the mole is that you kind of have all the answers to the test already. Like, you know what everyone else is looking for. So what gets really interesting is kind of when people start having conversations with you and they start saying things like, oh, I think such and such is the mole because look at what they're doing. And then I would just be listening like, yeah, that's looking very suspicious. And those moments were just really fun because like I got to get this inside window to how other people thought and what they believed. But I knew what they were looking for. I think the parts that are really hard is that in reality TV, you don't really have access to the outside world. You don't have your phone, you can't call anyone, you can't leave by yourself. So you really get encompassed into this like new world that you put in, and it can get very emotional. And you kind of lose your anchor to real life and your support system. So I think the hardest part was not only like managing my own emotions and managing my own stress, but also like experiencing other people's emotions and their stress and like them getting upset by their own failures and me having to like kind of console them, but also being a part of the problem as well is like a really weird place to be.
Right, thank you.
Okay, Dr. Stitt, so you've talked a little about your specialty being the effects of substance abuse on the brain. How did you get into that?
Yeah, I got into that because in your last year of residency at Mayo, you have to give this presentation as when you sort of your senior year, if you will, where you get a case and you don't know the answer. You get the history of what the patient's symptoms, and they give you the patient, what their examination was like, what they could and couldn't do right on the neurologic exam, and they give you like the MRI findings and some of the blood work, but they don't tell you the answer. And they give you about 7 days to just take it and go home and then try to figure it out. And then you get in front of the whole department with all your teachers and all these neurologists at Mayo Clinic, and then you present over an hour at what we call grand rounds, and then at the very end you have to say, I think the answer is blank. And it's obviously a very intense situation, and the nerves are high. And the answer to my case was a toxic event from a recreational drug. And so so I spent this week deep diving into the scientific literature about these conditions, and I found it's a corner of neurology that really not a lot of people have really sort of planted their flag in. And being a general neurologist, I don't have any particular one specialty, and that itself is not really a specialty. You can't do extra training in substance use disorder. So it's a way as a general neurologist that I can have sort of a specialty because it does affect all types of the nervous system. And so that was the genesis of how that happened. So.
All right, thank you. I have a question for Sam. So, you went all the way to Boston, to MIT, like 14 hours away. So, what brought you back to Bowling Green?
There are a lot of reasons why. I think you never realize what matters to you about a place until you're not in the place. So one thing I'll recommend to you all as you go through the years ahead, travel, see the world, maybe even go somewhere else for a while. But you also realize what's important to you about the place that you came from. So for me, it was, I realized what a Kentuckian I was during my years in places like Boston and New York, and also just realized what potential we have here. So Kentucky from 1970 to 2020 led the nation in what people call brain drain. I don't know if you've ever heard that phrase. But we've got a lot of smart people here, and to find good jobs or pursue their careers, a lot of them left. In fact, everybody you've heard from today has left Kentucky at one point or another, most anyway. And it really just occurred to me at some point that there are so many careers you can do from anywhere, why not here? And I'll say, there are a lot of stereotypes about our state. So one of the organizations I work with is called Kentucky to the World, and its focus is on highlighting all the exceptional things Kentuckians do and how it is very counter to a lot of the stereotypes you hear. Technology has changed everything. That idea that in most careers you have to pursue, you have to go somewhere else, for many careers that's no longer true. So what can we build here together? That's really my question for the future. So that's not to say you shouldn't go somewhere else, but consider coming back, because I think there's so much potential here in the next 10, 20 years. To see what's going to happen in Kentucky.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Kasi, I have a question for you from a current Russellville student who asked if you have any advice for people who are graduating soon.
Ooh, first of all, who is it that's from Russellville High School? Amazing. Okay, I love that. I mean, I went to Gatton, but Russellville High School has a special place in my heart as well, because if you grow up in Russellville, you realize that you kind of grew up with the same people from elementary to middle school to high school, and you kind of create this really beautiful relationship of knowing someone for so long. Also, Panther for life, so just throwing that out there. But I would say for anyone graduating high school, advice I would have for you, I would definitely say find someone that you connect with, like an adult, that you connect very strongly with, and that can help guide you. So this could be your parent, this could be a teacher, this could be a counselor. Because what I found is you can do all the research that you want, but what's really beautiful is having someone that knows the world and knows what's out there, and for you to be able to ask questions to. And you can feel it when someone's in your corner. You'll just know. You'll know there's a connection with someone, and you probably already have that person in your mind. Go up to them and tell them, can you be my mentor? Can you be my mentor and help guide me through the next few years of my life? And give them assignments and work with them and say, hey, I really want information about this school. What should I do? I really want information about this opportunity. What should I do? And once you find that person, I think it's they're kind of like your guardian angel. And I think that's going to be really helpful for leaving high school and just figuring out what's best for you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we have about 2 minutes left, so I'm going to ask a question for all of you. So many people here, they're getting ready to go into high school, they're already in high school, and they're getting ready to start planning for their future. So what advice would you give them when looking towards the future and trying to chase their dreams?
I'll start again. That's fine. So my biggest advice is that some of the biggest rewards that I've ever received have come out of discomfort, getting out of my comfort zone. Discomfort is part of the human physician, or part of the human condition, not the human physician. Some of the biggest gains have come when I've got out of my comfort zone. And so not being afraid to take on something where you say, I'm probably going to be nervous for that. I probably might feel out of place. But taking that leap has led to some of the biggest rewards. And as long as, and then of course, just having purpose And like I talked about just before, if you can do, if you're ever wondering and you're lost about, what to decide, what field to go into, if you can do something where a part of your day-to-day is serving others, that is the cure for burnout, is serving others. When I'm on the phone arguing with another insurance company because they won't do something for my patient and I just want to throw the phone down and come down to the depths of Mammoth Cave and hide, I think about my purpose and trying to serve that patient, because that's what I'd want them to do for me if they were my doctor. And so keeping purpose and not being afraid to get out of your comfort zone and serving others. You can't go wrong.
So, threw me under the bus. So, imagination. That's what I want to say. My advice to you, I'm going to tell you a story about a kid. You remember that movie I talked about, They Live, just a minute ago? So the kid that made that movie was a professor's kid who, his dad was a professor here at WKU, and he lived over on Chestnut Street, and he was an only child, and he sat in Bowling Green and dreamed about what was possible. And he moved to LA, and he made movies like Halloween, if any of you all are familiar with Michael Myers, and a lot of other franchises. And it all stemmed from imagination. By the way, I live in John Carpenter's old house here in Bowling Green, and to me, that is the pinnacle of imagination. You can dream it real, as a company called HitSense that's based here in Bowling Green has said. So don't let anybody tell you you can't do something, and everything starts with imagination and dreaming something up, but there's an ingredient you've got to add to it, which is a lot of hard work and a lot of getting knocked around, and it's not easy. So you all, don't be afraid to dream and then put the work in to make that dream become real. And I think great things can happen for each and every one of you.
I would say start somewhere. You might not have all the answers, you might be unsure, but just start somewhere and you'll have that feeling inside of you that I'm really interested in this and this is where I want to go in the beginning. But you may not have all the answers, and that's okay. So when I was in high school, I wanted to be an architect. And then when I was at Gatton, I took my first architecture class, and I realized I hated architecture. And then I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll be a civil engineer. It's a little bit more mathy. It's not as much drawing and just like pictures like architecture. And then I was at Columbia University, and I took my first civil engineering class, and I was asleep in every single lecture. And so I thought to myself, okay, clearly I shouldn't be a civil engineer if I'm not interested in this. And then I took a computer science class at Columbia, and I found that I was so excited to go to lectures, which I never thought I would say about a computer science course, and I was so excited to do extra credit assignments. And what's really funny about that is I didn't like computer science in high school. I thought it was really difficult, and it stretched me to my core. I was in tutoring like every week, but what I found is I had paid with my blood, sweat, and tears and gained this great foundation, and that when computer science came around again the second time, I really enjoyed it. Now, all that to say, a lot of decisions I made was based off architecture. I went to Columbia because it was the best architecture school in the nation at the time. Little did I know I was like never going to do architecture. So a lot of times you'll just start somewhere and make decisions based on what you believe in and what you know. And what will happen is things will change, and that's okay. But the worst thing you can do is do nothing. So.
Okay, thank you. I think that's all the time we have today, but